I'm Liz Davis. I'm a senior lecturer in Children and Families Social Work at London Metropolitan University, and I'm going to present the details of 2 online child protection training courses that I've written and published with Kate Cairns of Akamas in partnership with this university. The details of the courses and the accompanying reader, which is called Protecting Children, are available all on the Akamas website. Now, Kate and I worked together throughout the Islington child abuse scandal in the 90s as she fostered one of the Islington children, and I was a team manager at that time investigating the extensive abuse of children within the care system. We both learnt an enormous amount there about the impact of child abuse on young people, and much of our thinking has developed out of those experiences that we shared in investigating the abuse, protecting as many children as we were able to, exposing the abuse and providing evidence for the inquiries throughout the years ahead. We're very aware of the very pressing need for accessible introductory training, and we hope you'll find this presentation of interest and help us and work with us to further the protection of children in this country. First of all, the courses are about turning caring adults into protective adults and about creating a network of protective adults in the community to be the eyes and ears for children. On this diagram, you'll see that the child in the centre of the first circle is surrounded by adults who may be abusers or they may be protectors, and much of the time we can't distinguish between the two in the child's world. If a child has disabilities, they'll be surrounded by even more adults in their life than other children. Therefore, there are likely to be more abusers as well as more protectors. For the abuser to get close to the child in the second circle, they have to push the protectors away, right out of the way, and abusers will be very cunning and will spend much effort in doing that. For the last circle, you'll see that the protectors have moved close to the child, and that is, by doing so, they're pushing abusers right out of the child's environment. So these courses aim to provide protective adults with the confidence to do that, to protect children effectively and to remove abusers from the world of the child. Now, we've had more than 1,500 serious case reviews since the Children Act 1989, 78 in the last year alone, and there's several current cases in the media. We've got all the knowledge base we need to protect children. It's been developed since the very first inquiry in 1945. We've got all the legislation and all the policy that we need, but always the problem is in implementation. So these courses aim to teach effective implementation of that sound policy and legislation. And Lisa Arthur-Warry at her tribunal case, she was the social worker for Victoria Climbié, it was said that she should have held on to the baton of child protection. That's an image that's always stayed with me, really, that it's important for each of us to hold on to that baton until we're absolutely sure that the child is safe, if that baton is handed to us by the child or by protectors in the community. We must also make sure that other people are sharing with us in holding on to that baton and working together with us to promote the protection of children until the child is safe. There are 2 courses. The first is called Developing Basic Awareness, and it is about raising awareness at a very basic level. The second course is Protecting Children, Developing Basic Skills, and that consists of 3 modules, and the first course of 2 modules. The first course is for anyone who has contact with children. To give you an example, in the Victoria Climbié case, the receptionists in one of the authorities noticed that Victoria looked very different to a woman who was supposedly caring for her, who was very well dressed and well presented, and Victoria looked very unkempt. It was the receptionist that noticed that. They also noticed that she'd been left standing for an hour in the reception area unattended. 2 very important indicators of a child being neglected, but which, were picked up by people who didn't have a voice within the child protection system. So this course would be ideal for people such as receptionists. When I worked in a local authority, I did an investigation around people who were drivers who drove vulnerable children from one place to another. They'd been subjected to some disciplinaries, and in their defence they said, well, they'd never had any child protection training. They weren't aware of what was acceptable and unacceptable behaviour in relation to the children that they were driving from one place to another. And when children are being driven around, they feel safe and there's no eye-to-eye contact, and they feel less under pressure than in other situations. So a lot of children had actually talked to these drivers. When I ran training for about 200 of these drivers, there was an amazing number of disclosures that came to light from things that the children had told them, which led to a whole number of investigations. So again, these are the kind of people that would be very good recipients of this training. Another example is that if we're going to listen to children, we have to listen to absolutely everybody that has an importance in their network. And all those people need to be trained in the awareness of child abuse issues. For instance, people who work in human resources or contracts departments to be absolutely rigorous in their procedures for recruiting people safely who are in the world of children. And you may remember Ralph Morris, who was the headmaster at Castle Hill School, where many boys were abused over many years. And if only somebody had checked his references and his qualifications from square one, then he would never have been able to go on to abuse. So it's about everybody, each person in their specific role, being confident to take that role very seriously indeed. The second course, the basic skills, is for any professional whose work involves services to children and families. So here we're talking teachers, police, health visitors, probation officers, and so on, social care workers. And it is the equivalent of a 2-day introduction to child protection training course. The courses are based on face-to-face training, which I have carried out over 15 years of my experience as a child protection trainer to a very wide range of staff in both the voluntary and statutory sector. I was quite sceptical in the beginning about how you could translate face-to-face courses into online training. And, you know, how would you include the complexities of multi-agency debate and discussion on such complex issues as, you know, what is actually seen to be child abuse and how to investigate it. And I'm really convinced that we've managed to do this in these courses. We've integrated the learning that I've gained from participants over the years and thought about all the questions that are commonly asked, all the confusions which are commonly addressed. And I've made use of that experience. And also I've made use of the fact that I know that these courses impact on the participants and can cause distress, which can be a block to them hearing the message about protecting children. And, you know, it's not been unusual at all to receive disclosures from participants at times at the end of courses or in the lunch breaks, as it triggers for themselves personal or professional difficult memories of their own experience of being children or working with children. So we've tried to build into these courses support networks as well, and information about how they could gain support for themselves. So the courses do promote the use of judgment. They're not a tick box of mechanistic approach. They promote the proactive protection of children, investigation and intervention to protect. They support learning and encourage questioning and reflective practice. The courses address the following questions. Why is it important to protect children? What is abuse? How is it defined? When to protect children? When is the point that someone should be expected to make that phone call to social services or the police child abuse investigation team? And how to go about doing that. And it's quite interesting that the public in general have very little knowledge about how to report child abuse. In the magazines that come from local authorities, you'll find lists of numbers for all kinds of services around domestic violence, drug addiction and so on. But very commonly there is nothing about reporting child abuse. So one thing we address in these courses is taking people through very carefully the actual mechanisms and processes they need to go through to make sure a child does get protected should they need to be.